the taller they are, the more they're
Yeah, perfect. And that probably doesn't just go for football players. I think that goes for all of us. So the taller you are, the more you weigh. That's pretty standard. My one daughter is 49 inches and she's about 50 pounds. My other daughter is 61 inches and she's about 90 pounds. So kind of makes sense. There's a big gap. I mean, when you look at both my daughters, there's about this much space in between them. So the more taller you are, the more you weigh. It makes sense to think about. So what we're going to do is we're going to try and create a scatter plot using our calculator. One way to create a scatter plot would just be to take these and graph them as x and y. So like this would be my x, this would be my y. We could make this a t-chart. So you can think of this as a t-chart. And we could plot each of those points by hand. That would be one way to make a scatter plot, and then we can kind of see what's going on. The calculator also makes a scatter plot for us, which is pretty cool that the calculator can do that. So in your calculator, there is a button called Stat, and it's next to the 4 silver arrows. So if you can find that Stat button next to the 4 silver arrows and touch it, press the button there. When you do that, you see then a screen that comes up that says Edit, Calculate, and Test. Right now we're going to edit it because we need to enter data into the calculator. So if you just hit Enter, it's already on Edit. So we're going to do number 1. Anybody have data in the calculator right now? No, because you've never used that. Okay, so on L1, we're going to treat that as our x, just like a t-chart. You're going to enter your data into L1. I'm going to clear mine out. So whatever your inches are, the height of the football player, is what you're entering into L1. So right now, just take a minute. Once you get down through those 11 players, you're going to move over and enter the weight into L2. And then go back and just make sure that you put them in correctly. So do a double check on your data. Run through your numbers, make sure they're all entered correctly. Anybody need help? Not sure where we're going, where you're at in calculator. And when you're done, your L1 and L2 should line up. If they don't, it will not make a calculation, because if they're not matching, you have one data piece that doesn't have something to connect to it. So make sure that they're both matching. You should have 11 in each. And 67 and 154 should be the x and the y values. So make sure you have that as well. It should kind of line up together. All right, everyone have their data entered? Okay, so the first thing we're going to do is try and graph it to physically see the scatter plot. And in order to do that, we need to hit a couple of buttons. So we are going to hit the second y equals. You might want to write this down. So we'll say to graph. So we're hitting second y equals, and I think there's room that you could probably fit it right next to that window information. So question B, if you just want to kind of put this next to question B. So the second button is the right side, or the left side, sorry. Y equals is above that. So then you get a screen that looks like this. So it says stat plots, meaning we're going to try and graph a statistical graph. We need to change it so that it's on, because right now, if we're doing regular graphing, we're just graphing lines, but we wanted to graph a scatter plot. So you need to hit enter. And then you have to hit enter again. So enter again. Now my on is highlighted instead of the off. You don't have to change anything else because it's already going to be set up for you. But you see, like right now, it's bold on the scatter plot. We have a couple of other graphs that we can make. So we have a histogram. These guys are box and whisker plots. This is called a stair graph. This is just one that literally connects all your points from the first point to the second point. So it would like just connect whatever your graph is doing, it would connect all those points. And then the last thing you need to do is you have to press zoom. So up here is zoom. And then it's number 9. And you just hit the 9 and then it graphs a scatter plot for you. Does anybody not have a scatter plot? So 1, 2, 3. And again, if you just put those directions right next to letter B, then you'll kind of remember how to graph this scatter plot. So for me to know that you graphed it, instead of me literally walking around and checking each one of you, you'll be asked to give a window. The last thing that you need to do is just hit the window button. After you graph your scatter plot, the window changes for every set of data that you have. The window is also at the top. These are buttons that you probably haven't used a lot of. So up here it says window, and when you tap that window button, we should all have the exact same information in our window. The window is the X and the Y values that you see in your calculator screen. So my minimum X value is 60.8. The maximum X value is 75.2. That's the values going left and right. So it doesn't start at 0. The one on the left is starting at 60.8. The one on the right is starting at 75.2. The one on the right is ending at 75.2. And then the Y min and the Y max tell you how low the point on the calculator is and how high it goes. So it's describing the screen that you see. That's what we call the window. So whatever window that we have, the picture we see, this is the points that are being used to get that graph. Does anybody not have these values? Good. Awesome. So if you go through these 4 pieces, really the first 3, every time you have a set of data, you're going to have a different graph. And then when you hit the window, after you've graphed it, then that data should all match. And it changes every time. If it doesn't change, then you didn't graph your scatter plot. So now that we can kind of see what the data looks like from the calculator, fill in your window if you haven't done so already. So that's where we would put the 60.8, 75.2, there was a 1 here, I think the next one was 113. Like 95, 201.05. And then that was 1. Any questions? So I'm going to just bring back our graph so you can look at it for a minute. Maybe. We're going to see if we can try to find an equation now, because our goal is to try and use an equation to answer questions, analyze the data. There we go. All right, so just a reminder, this is what our graph looks like. So we can see that it's not a perfectly straight line, but the graph is going up. It's increasing. So the next thing that we want to do then is to try and come up with an equation based off this information, and that's question C. So using your calculator, determine the equation for the line of best fit. Round A and B to 2 decimals. So again, that information, the first thing we're going to do is hit the stat button. And then we're going to arrow to the right to calculate. And then we're going to press the number 4. So I'll go through that with you. So back to stat. So I hit the stat button. That's what the screen looks like when you press stat. We're going to arrow now to the right to the calculations. So now that I have this data, what kind of calculations can we make with the data? And there's a whole bunch under here. So we'll do the one variation statistics when we get to statistics at the end of the year. But we're going to go down to number 4 where it says lin reg. That's linear regression. And we're writing an equation in the form essentially mx plus b, but it's using an a in front of here instead of an m. So go down to number 4 and press enter. And then you get this screen. You need to press enter until it goes down to calculate. So we need to calculate our information. Do not change anything. You'll never have to change anything. Any questions? Please let me know if you didn't get there. Did it get the graph? You did get a graph though, right? Oh. Somehow your data got deleted. You don't have to read it, but that's okay. Anybody else not get it? So when it wants us to write the equation, we're using 2 decimal places. So make sure you're rounding the a to 2 decimal places, you're rounding the b to 2 decimal places. So a is your slope, the b is the y-intercept. So Julian, can you give me an equation with rounding to 2 decimal places?
Y equals 5.33x minus 209.48.
So again, those directions to get that equation would be you're hitting stat, you're going over to calculate, you're pressing number 4, and then you hit enter until you get down to the calculator. Questions? So there's one last thing that we're going to use the calculator for, and that's the correlation coefficient, which as a reminder is the R value. Once you turn this on, you shouldn't ever have to worry about it again. It should appear every single time. So we have to turn it on the calculator, get the calculator to grab it for us once, and then it'll always be there. So back to that calculator one last time. We're going to hit the second and then the number 0. It says catalog. There's actually a catalog in your calculator, or an index that tells you everything that's in the calculator, every single function that's in there. We need to go down to the words diagnostic on. So you need to go down to D. So you're just going to arrow down. So you see diagnostic on. There we go. So diagnostic on. Again, you just need to do this once. You won't have to do this part again. Hit enter. Hit enter again, and it should say done. And then I want you to go back and try and grab the equation again. So we're going to go back to stat, over to calculate, and hit number 4 a second time. And when you do that, you should now see an A, a B, and an R. You don't need the R squared, we just need the R. So the correlation coefficient is the R value, that's 0.84. We're not using the R squared, you'll use that if you take CHS stats. So we're just using the R, which is 0.84. Yes. There you go. You just need to go through. Yep. Anybody else not get it? Okay, so the correlation coefficient, what does it mean? This number, the closer it is to 1, tells us how much our data fits to a straight line.
If it's a positive or negative correlation.
Yeah, so in this case, is it positive or negative?
Positive.
Yeah, excellent. So this is a positive correlation. Because 0.84 is going up, and together they're kind of forming a line. And then the last question, and then we'll get to our activity here. So we'll just stop with letter E for now. Use your calculator or use your equation, not calculator. So we're going to use the equation we have written above to predict the weight of a football player whose height is 5 feet 11 inches. How tall are you if you're 5 feet 11 inches? Rebecca, say it again. 71 inches. Our data is given to us in inches. We can't plug 5 feet 11 inches in the calculator or in the equation. So now we're using this equation. This is called the best fit equation. It's the average equation where most of our points fit to. So instead of looking up to the chart where somebody who's 71 inches might be a certain weight, we're going to find what the average person who is 71 inches, how much they should weigh. So once we have data, we're now figuring out that average person. So an average person who is 71 inches, what should they weigh? And in the calculator, we have this equation that we got. So we're going to use the calculator equation and plug in the 71. So once you have that equation, then you're referring to the equation to help you get the other calculations. So how much does a person who is 71 inches weigh? Julian?
168.95 pounds.
So about 161 pounds. And again, that's average. So not everybody is going to weigh that much. Some people might weigh more, some people could weigh less, depending obviously on the makeup here. Questions?
It was 168.
Not one, yeah. Thanks. There we go. Thank you, Julian. Alright, so what we're going to do is we're going to try and create data with the ages that we have of these famous people, and then we're going to try and see if we can put that information into the calculator. Just so that I don't get too far here, I'm passing out your homework. And on this homework, once you get it, let's see, we're not going to do all of it. Today is more practicing. Can you get the information in your calculator? Can you create an equation? Tomorrow we'll really start doing the interpreting. That's you. Alright, so at the top, it's a linear chart so that it doesn't take up a lot of space. And then all the questions underneath go along with the chart. The year is your X, the percentage is your Y. That'll be the same every single time. The top is the X, the bottom is the Y. But instead of using 1984, it says you're using 0 to represent 1984 because that's the initial year. We will not be plugging in years into the calculator because the calculator thinks that as a number 1,984. It does not think of it as a year. So you're plugging 0 in for 1984. We're representing 0 as 1984. And then you plug in a 1 for the next year, a 2 for the following year, and so on. I would like you to kind of see if you can work through letter G on this on both sides. So you can stop at letter G because you should be able to know what the y-intercept is. You should be able to know what the slope is once you have an equation. The rest of it underneath we'll talk about tomorrow. But both sides, see if you can do through G. All right. So if you take out your sheet with the actors, see how well you did it guessing the age of people, and then we're going to graph it, and we'll see what your graph looks like. And if it gets close to a line, then you're pretty good at guessing. If your graph is totally scattered, then you're not so good at guessing. Maybe you didn't know who they were. That could be part of it. So the first person on here is Donald Trump. Does anybody know how old Donald Trump is? Connor? So Connor said he's 72. And he is exactly 72. So you should have a guess. And then over here is the actual age. So whatever you guessed, and maybe you were like, well, he looks pretty old, so you guessed 78, but his actual age is 72. How about Taylor Swift? Anybody go to the Taylor Swift concert? Did you go to the concert? No. Nobody went to the Taylor Swift concert? I didn't go either, but I was trying to get tickets last minute. They were still too expensive for me. How old do you think Taylor Swift is? 29. She is actually 28. So her actual age is 28. Holly, I'm going to put your guess there. It's 29. She turns 29 in December. So December 13th, she'll turn 29. All right, how about Oprah? Oprah was huge when I was in middle school and high school. She was big. Like I went home, watched Oprah from 3 to 4 o'clock every day. Odette, what do you think for Oprah? How old is she? 63? It's not a bad guess. Oprah is actually 64. Her birthday's in January. She has a January birthday. Will Smith. Will, we'll let you guess Will Smith. How old do you think Will Smith is, Will? 42? Julia, what were you thinking?
49.
Oh, he is 49. He turns 50 on the 25th of this month. He looks pretty good for 50. Almost 50. All right, how about Antonio Brown? Matt?
30.
Antonio Brown is 30. So we'll put 30 there too. Antonio Brown's turned 30 in July. How old's Beyonce? Anyone take a guess, Julia? 39. Beyonce is 37. And she just had a birthday on the 4th, so last week she had a birthday. How about Justin Timberlake? How old's he? Connor? 35. Justin Timberlake is also 37. His birthday's in January. Who's Matt Murray? Yeah, the Penguins goalie. Rebecca, do you know how old Matt Murray is? 24. He is 24. Selena Gomez, how old is she? Maddie, what did you say for Selena Gomez? 27, not bad. She's only 26. That's a pretty good guess. Her birthday's in July 22nd. And then the last one I have on here is Julia Roberts. Classic female actor. She was in Wonder. Anybody see Wonder? It's a really good movie. I'd say go see it, rent it, Netflix it. Might even be on Netflix right now. Yeah, I think it is. DVR or try and watch that one. How old did you say Julia Roberts is, Mackenzie? 50? She actually is 50. She turns 51 later this month. Okay, so yours might not. These are actually like pretty good guesses here. So this looks like my graph will be pretty darn good. I'm going to graph these on my calculator. I want you to graph yours on your calculator. So your guess is X or L1. The actual age is Y or L2. And I want to show you how to clear your calculator without deleting things. So remember, we're going to go to Stat. We're going to hit Enter. And then in order to get this data out of the calculator, you're going to use the up arrow so that L1 is highlighted. Do not ever hit Delete. Bless you. You're going to hit Clear. Because if you hit Delete, L1 will disappear. And then Enter clears all the data in one swipe. So I'm going to go do that again. I'm going to go over to L2, go up so that L2 is highlighted. You're hitting Clear and Enter, and boom, your data is gone. Never hit Delete. So see if you can get that information into your calculator. Your guess and the actual age. So your guess is the X or the L1. And everybody should have a different graph because we all have different answers. The L2 is the same, but the L1, your guess will be different. Again, make sure, mine's off. Make sure that your L1 and L2 are lining up. You should have the same number of values. We've got 10, so you should have 10 in each of them. Take notice I didn't put myself on there. You can pretend to think that I'm really, really young. 21, 22. Plus, I'm not famous, so I can't put myself on there. All right, so to graph it, we're going to see if we can get this to graph. After you have the data entered in, hit second Y equals, so follow the graphing steps. And then you hit Enter. And then we're hitting Zoom 9. So the Zoom button and number 9. And my data looks pretty good up here. I have a crazy number of line up there too, but that's what my graph looks like. So look at your graph. If that graph looks pretty close to a straight line, then you're really good at guessing. Maybe you just knew all the people on there. Yours is pretty good. If your graph is more scattered, then you did an okay job, as long as it still looks like it's filling up. And then the next thing you can do is try and get your line in y equals mx plus b form and get the r value. Because the r value tells you actually how good you did at guessing. The closer that number is to 1, the closer your data would be to a line. So now that we have the graph in the calculator, I'm going to see if I can get a line. So I'm moving over to calculate down to number 4. And remember, you're just hitting Enter till you actually get down to where it says calculate. So 2 things that'll tell you if this is a good line. The slope in this one, I have 0.94. If that number was 1, it would be perfect because the guess and the age would be exactly the same. So it would be a perfectly straight line. The R value is the other thing that would tell you how good you are at guessing. This one here is 0.98, so the people that I called on created this line. 0.98 is really close to 1. If this number is really close to 1, our slope, or the graph, is also very close to being a straight line. Does anybody have an R value that's around 0.98, 0.95, even 0.95? Good job. So if yours is like that 0.95, you did a pretty good job at guessing those ages. Questions? So tomorrow we'll work through like trying to interpret and answer a lot of questions. And then on Wednesday, we're going to do another activity. So we'll try and like see what else we can do with the calculator and group these together. And then we won't ever. There you go. You should go home and test your parents. See if they know all these people. They might not. Do you think they know Julia? Well, they know Julia Roberts. Do you think they know Selena Gomez, Justin Timberlake? Maybe. Maybe. But you go home and test them, and then you could create a graph for them. They would be wowed and amazed. You guys all think I'm crazy. Have an awesome day.